Before I can begin teaching you PHP, we of course need to get it set up on your system. And unfortunately, depending upon whether you're, for example, a Mac user or Windows or Linux, there's lots of different ways to get set up. And it would be great if we could all use the same setup or something as close as possible, because it'll make it easier for you to follow along. Now, first, if you're a Mac user, you may be surprised to find that PHP comes pre-installed on the Mac. If I bring up the terminal and I run php-v, which stands for PHP version, you very well might get something that says PHP 5.3. Now in this case it says PHP 5.4 because I have upgraded, but the system PHP, assuming you're running Lion, will be 5.3. If you're running an older version, it might be 5.2. And if you get nothing at all, that's okay, we're going to set up a MAMP stack shortly. So let's go ahead and open up Chrome, and I'll give you lots of different choices. So the most common one for Mac users, and we'll take a look at Windows as well, is called MAMP. And MAMP stands for Macintosh, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So we call this a MAMP stack. It's everything you need to build dynamic web applications. But again, when you install OS X, you already have PHP and you already have Apache. So the only thing that you would need to technically download would be MySQL. And what you're going to find is that the more seasoned PHP developers, they don't really use a dedicated app like this because they already have it available on their system. They'll compile the latest version of PHP, use the system Apache, and then they will download MySQL and connect it that way. Now that said, honestly, it can be a little cumbersome if you're brand new to PHP, you're brand new to maybe the command line, possibly. That can absolutely be a little bit overwhelming. And I don't want you to be overwhelmed at this point. You're still at the point where you need to be excited how easy it is to work with PHP, because that's one of its selling points. It's amazingly simple to enter a little PHP and immediately see the results in the browser. And that's one of the reasons why it's become the most popular language available. And that's why for this course, I'm going to recommend that you keep it simple, stupid, KISS. So use one of these dedicated apps. Once you feel confident in PHP, if you want, take a look at creating your own MAMP stack using what's built into the system. So if you're a Mac user, the most popular one is available at mamp.info. You can just come down here and there is a pro version. Right now, just stick with the free version. The pro version gives you a little more flexibility. You can create things called virtual hosts much more easily without having to edit what we call the Apache config file, but you're not quite there yet, and you can do just about everything with the free version. Now, if you're a Windows user, you're going to want to take a look at WAMP. As you might expect, WAMP is the same thing, but for Windows users. So Windows, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So if you're working along and you're on Windows, this is going to be the one that you set up. Next, if you're on Linux, then you'll want to take a look at something we call XAMPP. You might hear some people call it XAMPP. Either one really works. There's no official pronunciation, but most people do XAMPP. And you'll see, actually, this is available for every OS. So there's a version for Linux, one for Windows, one for Mac. And this is a great solution as well. Plenty of developers use it, and it's more or less the same thing. So you could see here, if I wanted to, we could use this version on my Mac, and that will set up Apache, PHP, MySQL. It also set up some extensions for PHP, like pair, and overall it gives you a bunch of stuff that you can work with. It's a great solution. So if you're on Linux or Windows or Mac, and this is the one you would like to use, definitely get set up on this one. Next, we have one by Zend, and Zend is the company responsible for PHP, and they have something called Zend Server. Now, they have a professional plan, but they also have what they call the Community Edition, which is free to download. This is a fantastic choice. The only reason why I wouldn't immediately recommend it to you is because it offers so many configuration options, very helpful configuration options, but it might be overwhelming again. And remember, the idea is to keep it as simple as possible right now. You don't need all of the features and flexibility that the Community Edition can provide you. And lastly, even though there are some other ones that we haven't taken a look at, there is bitnami.org, and they offer some stacks as well. And so this one you can see is the MAMP stack, and it's more or less the same idea. But one advantage to them is they are far more consistent with updates. And that is something you always need to remember. Is the company constantly updating? So for example, the one that we've downloaded, mamp.info, if we're honest, they don't update it as much as they should. They haven't yet updated it to PHP 5.4, and they haven't updated it to the latest version of PHP MyAdmin. So things move slightly on the slow end with this version. Whereas Bitnami, on the other hand, if we scroll down, you'll see they already have a MAMP stack for 5.4. Nonetheless, we're going to be using mamp.info, if only because it's so ubiquitous in the PHP community. And the final one that I'll show you is specifically for Mac users. If you want to get up and running with PHP 5.4 and you want to learn all of the new features, but you can't seem to figure out how to compile PHP, this offers it as a binary package. So it's not going to set up anything else. It's not going to set up MySQL or Apache for you, but it does give you a one-click solution for setting up PHP 5.4, and it comes as a binary. Okay, so now you've downloaded the apps, you've installed them. I'm going to go ahead and install MAMP on my system. Now I do want you to note, again, if I run PHPV, I already have 5.4 because I've compiled PHP from scratch. But that's okay because I can still install MAMP because it keeps it all contained within a single folder. So I'm going to run through this installation quickly. And there we go. That should take just about a minute to install. Next, it will have been installed to my applications folder, or I can use a tool like Alfred to bring it up. Now, you'll get this notification that actually, when you downloaded it, they go ahead and download MAMP Pro for you as well. But we just want to use the free version right now, though if you want to take a look at the Pro version, you get a free 30-day trial. So now, once we start it up, we're going to be taken to this page. And I'll go ahead and delete these other tabs for the time being. But before we take a look at this, let's close it out, and I want to show you what you get when you start up MAMP. So the first thing you see is it sets up the Apache server, it sets up MySQL, those are already running. See how it's a one-click solution. But if I go back to the terminal and I run php-v, it's still going to show me 5.4, and that's because I'm still running the system PHP. So remember, just installing this isn't going to give you access to the MAMP apps version of PHP unless you set it up that way. But we'll take a look at that shortly. We're going to come back, and now if we take a look at preferences, let's take a look at Start Stop. So start servers when starting MAMP, that's automatically enabled. Check for MAMP Pro when starting MAMP. For now, I'm going to deselect that. And next, we have this start page, and that will be the page that immediately runs when you start up MAMP. Okay. Next, we have our ports. I don't want you to be concerned about this. Again, it can be a little overwhelming at first. The defaults are fine for now. And next, you'll see PHP version. By default, it will be set to 5.3.6, or you can reduce it down to 5.2. We will exclusively be working in 5.3, so keep that selected. And then there are these extensions. Leave them like so for the time being. And lastly, we have Apache, and this is the server. This is the thing that's responsible for parsing the PHP, figuring out what we're trying to do, and rendering it on the page. It's our web server. Now, for Apache to work, we need to set up a document root. And this is simply a way of saying, this is where all of my PHP applications or websites, anything that we're running PHP in, where are we going to store it? So you'll see by default, it's stored within /applications/mamp/htdocs. Now, if we want to take a look at that, let's go into Applications. Scroll down, you'll see we have MAMP here. htdocs, this is our document root. So whenever you want to set up a PHP website or test PHP, you're going to put your folders or files within this folder. And it'll be something similar for Windows users as well. Just take a look at what the document root is set to there. But what's nice is you can change this if you need to, but we're not going to. And now we can come back to the web browser and take a look at what we see here. So first, it's letting us know, okay, good job, you're up and running. We can run PHP info, and PHP info is a function, PHP info, one word. And what that will do is spit out everything related to your installation of PHP. So you can see where your configuration file for PHP is, and that's called php.ini. Mostly, you don't need to worry about this too much yet. You will get to the point where you refer to it frequently when determining whether you can use, for example, MySQL Improved or PDO, some of these things that may not immediately be installed. But as you get better, you'll get to a point where you refer to this every once in a while if you need to make sure you have the right extension installed. Next, we have this PHP MyAdmin web application. And this is a custom application that makes it easy for you to work with a MySQL database. And we're going to be doing that a lot in this course, but we're not quite there yet. Just know that it's available. And of course, if I go back to start, we can see some other helpful things, such as if we want to connect to our database, this will let us know, okay, what is the host, what is the user, what is the password. And that's about it. And that's why MAMP is so popular, because it is quite literally a one-click installation. And the same thing is going to be true for you Windows users with WAMP. So it wouldn't be an installation if I didn't show you how to actually get something on the page. So let's finish up this video by echoing the obligatory hello world. So I'm going to close this out for the time being. And if we go back to Applications, into MAMP, now I don't want to have to do these steps every single time. So I'm going to create an alias by right-clicking, choosing Make Alias, and I'll call it Sites. Now I can take this and drag it into my desktop. And looks like I have to rename it one more time. But now, whenever I click on it, I immediately am directed to the htdocs folder, as you can see. All right, so now let's just for the time being drag this into my code editor of choice. I'm going to assume that you have one set up, whether you're using Notepad++ or TextMate or Coda, or in my case, I prefer Sublime Text. So I will right-click, choose New File, and we're going to create an index, and you're probably used to HTML. That's for rendering static HTML, but we want a dynamic website. That's the whole point of PHP. That gives us the flexibility to have conditions. If this, then do that. Otherwise, do this. If the user wants to view this category, then pull in those records from the database. Or if they want to view items from that category, then respond in that way. That's the whole point of PHP. So I'm going to change it to a PHP extension. And that way, when Apache comes across it, and it sees things between these marks right here, PHP, it knows, all right, we have some PHP here. I need to parse that and render it on the page. So for now, within here, we're going to use your first command, which is called echo. And you can think of this as print. In fact, there is a print command that you can run. You can use them interchangeably, but it's more traditional, for whatever reason, to use echo. And we're going to echo hello world. For now, ignore the syntax and let's make sure it works. So you might think that we could just open a browser. I can go to File, Open File, and we can go to Applications, MAMP, htdocs, index.php. But that's actually not going to work how you would expect. Notice in this case, it actually downloaded the file, and that's certainly not what we want. We need to run this through our Apache server. So once again, let's go back to MAMP, and I'm going to hit Open Start Page. And I want you to note that it starts with localhost : and then the port, which is 8888. And that represents our document root. So for example, if I delete that and run it, we will get hello world, because by default, Apache is set up where if it does not find any file or a folder is requested, it knows, okay, I need to run index.php. And settings like that are stored within an Apache config file. And so what you'll see is if I explicitly write index.php, we get that as well. So now, remember when you want to run PHP, you don't just browse to the file. You actually have to run it through the Apache server. But now, in very little time at all, you're set up with your own MAMP or WAMP or LAMP stack on your computer, and now we can actually dig into the PHP language.